I was helping my daughter study last night for the Virginia Standards of Learning exam, so I recognize that's above your concern, your level of authority, but I didn't know who to raise my concern to, because usually I cook and my husband assists my children with their homework, but I was feeling a little under the weather, so we reversed roles last night, and I saw that what they were teaching my child was that the status of early Africans was unknown, and that they were probably slaves or servants. As a HBCU graduate who knows better, although I lived in Prince William County, I attended Thomas Jefferson High School, so I was not a product of Prince William County schools, but it's one thing to say, we're not going to cover that. It's another thing to lie to my child and say that their history is unknown and that they were probably servants or slaves before they came to America. And I feel like part of this miseducation is the reason for our current country's climate. And the fact that if my child gives an answer other than what's on that paper, that she's considered wrong. So how do I educate my child and teach her that her history is powerful, that her history is amazing, and what her classmates are learning or what they carry with them when they become senior leaders, executives, and feel that it's beneath them to promote someone above them because their ancestors were just slaves or servants. Right now, I'm working in the CIA as the chief of a group within the Diversity and Inclusion Office, and I'm fighting these battles every day to change minds, to change hearts, to change unconscious bias, because they're not unconscious, they're taught at this age to our children and their classmates. And I don't know what can be done about that, but I figured I'd start with you all. Because I have 3 babies, 9, 10, and 11, in Prince William County schools who are being shaped for their future.
The soul of a panther, the mind of a scientist, steadily seeking answers. Racism is cancer, so I'm cutting through all the chatter. Show us more than black squares to prove our Black Lives Matter. Everybody knows it when they see it, but they quiet when they speaking. I'm just diving off the deep end. I'm a teacher, so I'm teaching. I ain't beefing, cause I'm vegan. If you cherry picking history, then what the hell you teaching? Loving all the swagger, but you ignoring the Dan about how our system is fractured, and you just closing a chapter. I do it for my mama, she told me they do it karma. These racists is getting smarter, but now they facing their karma. Talk slick and I slide through, poetry like a haiku. If it's black, then we got that, we pull up just like a drive-through. Hold up, wait a minute, we not the minority. My circle rainbow and black the global majority. Stay down for the come up, police always got guns up. Love our art, but in the dark you cannot say that you love us. Oh, you colorblind, that's a fact, but would you say that if I wasn't black?
Your internet is not broken. Your internet is not broken. This is supposed to happen. Peace, 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 everybody. The guy with the bow tie checking in with you live for a special edition of Professionally Black to end or really keep on going with Black History Month. How y'all doing? How's everybody doing in the panel? We good?
Doing good.
Fantastic. Great.
All right.
I saw Jarrett nodding with the song I did, so I appreciate the love for the music.
I felt like a crazy intro. I'm ready to do something, right? I don't know what we gonna talk about. Let's get it going. I'm ready, I'm proud.
Turn my headphones up.
Well, I want to say thank you to first the panel. I appreciate y'all you being here. I also say thank you to #TeamLive, #TeamReplay, however you consume the content. We appreciate it. Please let us know below and how you're watching it. And I was telling somebody earlier, this event came years ago. Liz is probably the longest tenure doing Professionally Black, but years ago I was interviewing Pierre Campbell, and I asked him, hey, how do you feel about the leadership of the White House when Trump was in office? And I thought it was a softball question. He's a leadership coach. And he paused and he thought about it. And then he answered it eloquently. And then when we got done, I said, hey, were you trying not to be the angry black man live on LinkedIn? And he's like, yeah, man, you know how it is. They're going to say something crazy. I got dreadlocks and I'm Jamaican. They're going to say it's a racial thing, but I think he's stupid. And I already was thinking of doing this, but he pushed me over the edge. So Pierre, if you're watching this, thank you again for pushing me to do this idea and making this happen, because I think LinkedIn needs it. But let me shut up for a second and introduce this panel. I'm going to start to my right, left, depending how you look at your computer, something like that. Dr. Teresa, let us know what you do, Queen.
Hey, welcome everyone. Happy to be on the panel again. It's been a while. So I am a speaker on leadership, DEI, and human capital. I'm also a novelist. And then also a government leader. I lead at a counterintelligence agency for EEO and diversity, equity, and inclusion and accessibility. Happy to be here today.
Boom. Up next, I just met Wesleyan recently, the Beyonce of sales. Let us know what you do, Queen.
Yes, the Beyonce of sales. That is who I am. I am a recovering chemist and I own my own company, Transform Sales, and we work with sales teams as well as leaders to teach behavior-based sales skills. So teaching you actually how to sell, not just how to cold call or not just how to throw things down your team's throat.
I love that. Appreciate that, Queen. And if you've not seen her book on LinkedIn, you must have your feed, your algorithms going crazy, like we said earlier. We got Liz Leiba in the house. How you doing, Queen? Oh, you're on mute.
Of course, I'm on mute. The whole thing that my book is about is not muting your voice. And of course, I'm on mute. My name is Elizabeth Leiba. Liz Leiba. I am a 20-year, I would say veteran of higher education, but then I think that I'm saying veteran and people might say that, oh, you're a veteran, but it feels like a battlefield, especially right now in Florida, where we're battling with the idea of Black history and culture. I actually have been teaching American literature, creative writing, and professional research writing for about 15 years. I work as an instructional design and innovation director of instructional design and innovation for Career College in Fort Lauderdale. But lately, in the past 2 or 3 years, have been really outspoken about advocacy, equity, and social justice for Black folk, particularly Black women. Black women's empowerment is really what my focus is. And my book, I'm Not Yelling, A Black Woman's Guide to Navigating the Workplace, is about empowering Black women's voices in the workplace.
Perfect. I appreciate you, Queen. Up next, we got Mr. John Graham, another author in the house. What's going on, King?
Hey, Brother Perry, good to be back with you. And what an amazing panel. I'm stunned. Absolutely an honor to be amongst giants here. John Graham, by day, Vice President of Global Employer Brand Diversity and Culture for Shaker Recruitment Marketing, where we blend DEI into employer brand and employee value propositions to help companies ensure that their marketing to attract talent actually matches the reality of lived experiences. DEI provocateur, I say all the quiet parts, the things that you often wish you could say out loud, as somebody who was recovering from plantation life, now sharecropping, author of Plantation Theory, The Black Professional Struggle Between Freedom and Security, speaker, author, and textured hair advocate.
Oh God.
Yes,
Perfect.
indeed.
Thank you. All right, King Jarrett, let us know what you do, King.
Yes, thank you again, brother. Like it's hard to start because everybody had a great intro, but I'm Jared Thomas. I'm Chief Revenue Officer and owner of Outside the Box Digital, which is a social media and content agency. I'm also the creator and owner of More Than a Title podcast, where we interview CEOs, industry leaders, creators like Liz and many others about their journey and how they got successful. And pretty much that's what I do. And I'm also a LinkedIn Black creator to follow and amplify. So, if all I talk about is how do we go from being from the mud and selling millions for corporations. And now all I'm doing is showing my journey of how we take that, build our own brands, and build generational wealth for ourselves and for our community.
Boom. All right. And last but not least, we got the crown in all her glory, Queen Janice. How you doing?
I'm doing well. How are y'all doing?
Great. Let us know what you do in case somebody hasn't seen you. I don't know how they wouldn't, but let us know what you do.
Yeah, so thank you so much for having me on this panel. I'm so excited about this discussion. So I am an equity consultant. So I work with organizations and institutions to help them identify barriers that prevent racially marginalized employees from growing and thriving in the workplace and then removing those barriers. So I do a lot of work around workshops and learning and development and training. And I also work closely with leaders to help them identify those barriers. So my first love is writing. So I am, like Liz mentioned, she's also a writer. I love to write. So I think a lot of the work that I do centers around giving a voice to the issues that, like John mentioned, a lot of folks know but don't really speak about. So aside from writing, I am also a podcast host, and I'm working on my third book, Decentering Whiteness in the Workplace.
Boom. Three-peat.
Yeah, exactly.
Well, I want to make sure we have another guest. It's the audience. We got to showcase a few people here. We got Lisa Hurley in the house. We don't know Lisa.
Hey,
She's Team Live. Martin
Hey,
Pratt,
Martin.
also Team Live, the godfather of LinkedIn for the Black side, that is, definitely. We have Janiqua, Greater Seattle. Thanks for representing from Seattle. Appreciate you, Queen.
Jaquanda. Hey, Jaquanda.
Hey.
We got Stacy in Arizona.
Hey, see.
We got Chad in New York. We're up there with Jared.
And
yeah, we also got, who else we got here? Hold on. I gotta make sure everybody, somebody's got their security on, but happy to be here with all the greatness. Appreciate that.
All LinkedIn users out there.
Yeah. Calvin, South Carolina. We got Texas in the house also having some security. It must be the governor's blocking people from seeing Black LinkedIn in Texas. So we'll figure that out. Michael's out there he's on YouTube saying, "Liz, be on mute again." So Michael's got jokes for you. Always has jokes. Jabbar said, "Hi, everyone." And then we got some heart love from Miss Miranda. Thank you for representing for us. And Troy said he has to get somebody's book. I don't know if it was Janice's book or Liz's book or John's book, but somebody's book is getting purchased.
Get
today.
all of them.
All of them.
Yeah.
And then Jared put that shirt is fire, talking about your shirt there, Janice. We show that shirt off real quick just for people that can't see it. Can you give us more of the shirt a little bit?
Yeah. Oh, my camera is right. Oh, I should point it down, right?
There we go.
Yeah.
Love it. Hey. And Miranda's in Oregon, so thank you for representing from Oregon. Appreciate that. So when I teed this up, the idea is thriving while being Black, kind of the play on that old book, Driving While Black, which is a book. It's been a movie on PBS. It's been talked about frequently. All of us probably had the talk before, but there isn't really a talk for when you get into business, when you get into your job, like how do you thrive? We have this system we had to live with, and we got to deal with it. We can't just redo the system. We're trying to, but right now we're in the system we currently have. So Liz, you've probably been the most vocal on LinkedIn about this, videos, pictures, stuff like that. So when you think about thriving in the current system, if you're talking to a young woman, a young 18-year-old Liz, something like that, what would you tell her to help her thrive in the education space that you work in?
She said, "Child,
deep off the rip."
Find another job, right?
Well, here's the thing about education. For me, especially because I've worked in higher ed for 20 years, I taught K through 12, I taught 8th grade, and I taught American history. education is really not designed for Black folk to thrive. Okay. It's really
Mm-hmm.
not designed for anyone to thrive, because the educational system that we have in America is designed to program you to be a worker. And that really, it has not changed. If you look at the way that we teach K through 12, like when I taught 8th grade, when I first got out of college, or even how I teach in higher ed, it's not really designed for critical thinking. It's not designed to create someone that is an innovator or has imagination. It's designed to feed you information so that you can be a cog in the wheel in the system. I usually even tell my freshman students, education is kind of a scam for me. I tell my freshmen that front up, because I'm just a real person, and I know that it's more of a tool or a structure so that you can educate yourself to be qualified. But then a lot of us even know that you can be qualified. You can have all the education in the world. Me and Lisa Hurley, who wrote talk about this all the time, that we have degrees upon degrees. You have a bachelor's, you have master's, you can have PhD. It doesn't really matter necessarily, because at the end of the day, when you look at the outcomes, I'm very education outcome oriented. And when you're looking at outcomes, if you have the education, but still for Black women, for example, just for one stat, the idea that Black women have to work 9 months into this year, 2022, say the last year, to be able to make what Brad in accounting made for that previous year. You got to work a whole year plus an additional 9 months to September to reach Black women's pay equity. So we know that education really is not the key to that. It's not designed to do that. We know that schools have a school to prison pipeline where our youth, young Black men and women, and I saw it myself working as an 8th grade teacher, where you'll have a Black student that is doing the exact same thing that a white student is doing. And that student from jump, a 12, 13-year-old, is being sent to the office more, being reprimanded more, being written up more likely to get suspended, more likely to get expelled. I had teachers pull me to the side and just say, hey, watch that one. And when that one came into my class, I'm like, girl, if you don't sit down, because you're going to be in here grading papers with me on lunch because you got a little bit too much to say, and I might have to call your mom. Like, we ourselves have been programmed to believe that our behavior is not age appropriate. So for me, education really is the foundation of the structure, which is designed to disadvantage, oppress, and create Black folk that we don't know ourselves. We know more about the majority culture than we even know about our own selves. And that is all by design.
Yeah,
Definitely.
Just a little tidbit I wanted to add on to that, because I have a 15, almost 16-year-old son, and we've gone through this from the time he was in first grade. And so it is very apparent, and it causes us as parents to fight or seem like we're consistently fighting for our child, which then sort of goes behind this stereotype of us being the problem at the school, right? Because we're not going to let anybody walk over our children or mistreat our children. And so it sort of feeds into that stereotype. But I guess my point or question that I want to pose to the group in this is, in terms of Black educators feeling empowered to support Black families, because in the situations that I had with white teachers, they would call a random Black teacher into the meeting. And I didn't know why. I'm like, why is the music teacher here? And so it was this feeling of, I'm trying to make you comfortable or to make it seem like I'm not doing this based off of race. And until I showed my behind and said that I'll have the news up here, I'll do this, I'll do that, then it was like, oh, wait a minute, everything stops. We're not going to, deal with your son like that anymore. But some parents don't have that sort of mentality of, I'm going to go up to the school and fight for my child. So we really depend on Black educators to do that in our stead. So what is your thoughts on how can we empower Black educators to sort of take that role?
There's not enough Black educators anyway. Educators, there are about 7% Black educators, college level students, and I don't want to monopolize the conversation, but just as far as education is concerned, it's going to be about 30% Black and brown students. There's only about 7% faculty, about 4% or 5% administration. So most of the at a college level, and the same thing is happening in K through 12, most of the interaction that Black and brown students will see would be for frontline, maybe like financial aid or maybe academic counselors. But for the most part, anyone they see in a role of authority, which would be a faculty member, administration, dean, college president, unless you go to a HBCU, you're just not going to see that. Doesn't pay enough. So you really can't keep Black folk there. Black folk are in the education system under the exact same amount of microaggressions. There are not enough Black male teachers. There's just not enough Black teachers, period. So it's very difficult for me. Like John, I chose to homeschool. I unschool my youngest. My older daughter, she went through Florida virtual school. So it was more of a structured program because she was a high schooler when I started homeschooling her. My youngest was unschooled. So it was like grocery store, adding up my groceries. That is your lesson for the day. Because he learned to read on his own. I never taught him how to read because he would just started reading. So our kids are very smart, but they're in environments with teachers that don't look like them, don't care nothing about them, will quickly send them to the office, get them a paperwork trail. This student is a problem. Brad or little Johnny or little, whatever that child name is, Tanner, Channing, Tanner, that child will be getting an IEP, seeing the counselor, getting all the support mechanism in place. Everybody sitting around. What can we do for Channing? What can we do for Tanner? Your child going to be in the office. And no matter how much you show your Black up there, they still looking at you the same way, whether you come peacefully, if you come in peace, like doing the Star Wars, the Star Trek, it doesn't matter what you do, they still going to say you're a problem. If you come in peace and you come back, they still are going to say you're a problem.
I come with heat, Liz. I come with heat.
Yeah.
Let me get John the Westland. Let me get John the Westland.
I'm gonna answer your original question there, but I will say, just to throw a grenade over the fence for the panel, I dare say we have plenty of Black educators. They're just in the home. We keep sending our children into environments that weren't designed to educate our children. But that's a whole nother conversation in a panel. But I know y'all would feel and agree in that regard. So what would I tell an 18-year-old, and what I do tell 18-year-olds who are considering going into a corporate environment? First and foremost, you have to know what you're navigating. There are very few opportunities for you to be put up on game about what you're about to experience when you walk into a corporate setting, especially as a Black professional, right? What you were programmed to do is go to school, get a degree, get a good job, work 30 years, retire and die. That was the programming and the operating system of our parents, grandparents, and everybody post-emancipation. The reality is this operating system has had several upgrades, but we're still operating off of old software. So what I suggest is you better know the cost of the climb. There is a price to pay the higher you go. And usually it comes with the suppression of your identity and cultural identity and the reduction of threat perception, right? And tactics that you'll have to use in order to be acceptable, soft and safe. You will have to figure out how to find community in predominantly majority or power majority cultures. You will have to learn a completely different language, and it isn't about code switching, which these are the things they don't tell you, right? And if your ability to master this alternate language or this hidden language can be the definer of your mobility upwards, right? So there's a lot of things. The other things I would say is learn to detach your value from your work output. And when I say that, it comes with the programming of us being brought here, our ancestors being brought here to work the hardest of any human being in history for free. And that was our worth to the society and this construct. We still believe that if we work harder, have the right credentials, that our value is based on that output. That's a very small percentage of your value to an organization, especially in a construct that's based on power dynamics that you weren't brought up around. Yeah. So there's a lot that needs to be unpacked before you step into these corporate waters.
And a part of that is also gatekeeping. So if you want to be a gatekeeper and stop other Black folk from getting in, go ahead and aspire to that, because that's going to be a part of your job too.
Yeah,
stopping
they
other
had
black
those on the plantation as well. Yeah, they were called drivers, overseers, second hands,
Yep.
all of those. But yeah, all of those dynamics exist. And if you still want to proceed, cool. At least you went in with your eyes open, and you
Right.
are comfortable with the cost for the climb.
Getting deep already.
Love
Leslie, go
that.
ahead, Queen.
Yeah, so I wanted to, as we were talking about the education system, one of the experience that I have had recently. So my youngest son, this is his first year in public school, and so he has two teachers. He has his math and science teacher is a Black lady, and then his ELA and social studies teacher is a white lady. And there were challenges in the beginning of the school year, and one of the things that I saw in that team teaching is his math and science teacher was like, hey, so this is how we need to deal with him. This is how we need to work with him. And so one of the things that I think that dynamic of, I've never worked in the education system, I can only speak as a parent, but one of the things that I have noticed is that I went in with eyes wide open, like, let us figure out how we can do this together. And as the white teacher was trying to marginalize him and trying to put him in a little box, she was like, okay, I don't need to do this. And she had someone there saying like, these are the things that we need to do to support our students. And I wanted to also add in there, I think the initial question was what can we say to people who want to get into education, early career people? I want to tell them to go into sales, because sales is the career that the tenacity, the drive, your outspokenness, all of those things that people tell you to quiet, don't do. We love that in sales. We want you in sales. Like, we want you to push Bob's button a little bit. We want you to talk out of turn. Like, we want you to do that. And yes, when you get into those corporate environments, you do have to deal with the same things that you have to deal with in other places. But a career in sales can literally change your life, because you are able to work as hard or as little as you want to, and your output is essentially tied to that. And so it breaks generational curses. It changes the trajectory of your family history. And yeah, like I said, there's always drama. There's always stuff we have to deal with, but sales is the career. Like, I'm an advocate for getting more people of color in sales. Like, this is what you can do.
Yes. Can I add 2 cents to it? Because I love this conversation. I love the cost of the climb too. So I love what everybody's bringing. But my parents, like my mom, my whole family, me and Liz spoke about this on my pod, right? Like, my whole family is educators. The reason when I came out of high school, why I didn't do that, because I knew there was a limit to what I could make there. I could be Michelle Pfeiffer, I could be Joe Clark on Lean on Me, and I could impact the community in ways that we can envision or even never imagine. And I'm only making a certain amount of money. So when you go into sales, like Wesleyan is saying, like, you get to control your own destiny. I went into sales not knowing, and like what John was saying is so real. I went in with my eyes, I went in there blind. There was nobody that looked like me. There was nobody that was helping me. I had no guide. I didn't know how to wear my pants, wear my tie. I had to cut my hair for raises, all these type of things you have to do. And guess what happened? When I started getting lit and my career took off is when I said, I'm done with that. I'm putting my hat on, my hoodie. I'm in the crib with my kids, and I'm tired of being somebody I'm not. And that's when shit takes off. And that's what I would want to do. And that's what I try to be. I want to be the young, how do I talk to the young 21 me? Because there was nobody for me. The elite C-level blacks were hard to reach. They're still hard to reach. And I'm interviewing, I'm told they're hard to reach. So how do we bridge that gap?
Yeah. I want to bring Janice on this, because Janice has been very transparent about her journey also through everything with your hair, with just being who you are. So when you think about this question, what comes to mind for you?
Well, I'm just like thinking about what all of y'all have said regarding the corporate, as Jean calls it, the corporate plantation. I think it's important, going back to your original question, Daryl, I think if I were to give advice to the younger me as far as like navigating corporate America and corporate spaces, I would say I always had to shrink parts of myself to be accepted in corporate America. And I think that if that's the path that you're going to go and you've decided you're going to go, or just corporate in general for the folks that are outside of the US, you're going to have to recognize that parts of yourself will have to shrink and will have to be molded and changed in order to adapt and in order to survive, right? I don't think that there's any way around that. Me personally, I'm not a 9-to-5 person. I knew I was never a 9-to-5 person. I'm a night owl. I don't fit into the corporate box, but I respect folks that are able to do that, right? And so I think that it's important to know yourself and know that, like Jared mentioned, he was like, I'm not going into education, even though my family and my people are educators, right? And it's important to know what it is that you want to do and not just go into corporate spaces because that's what you've been programmed to do and what you've been taught to do. So I knew early that I wanted to be an entrepreneur, but for whatever reason, because I was told I had to go get the 401k, do this, do that, like I went into the corporate space and I wasn't happy. So I think it's knowing yourself, and what feels comfortable for you. What is aligned with your beliefs and your values. And if you decide to go into corporate spaces, I think you have to go into it knowing that it's a lie to say that you can bring your authentic self to work, right? That's not true. You're always going to have to shrink parts of yourself to be accepted and to advance, right? In my experiences. So I just wanted to provide that piece of advice for anyone who's coming out of school or thinking about whether to go into a corporate space or entrepreneurship. I'm biased because I'm like pro entrepreneurship, but I just think it's something you have to consider.
Well, let's go on the flip side of that, because Dr. Teresa, I'm going to affectionately say you're on the dark side a little bit there with the government. So when you think about my father's military vet, he was in the Army for 45 years and then retired and did the same job as a civilian. So I saw the good side of it. And I also saw that he raised me that I couldn't choose who I worked with. They had to have my back no matter what. Like when he went to a mission, it's like, I can't choose this guy's a racist redneck. He and I better get along for this mission right now, because one of us ain't coming home if we don't do that right. So when you think about the government, when you got into and everything, what's your advice for somebody thinking about thriving in that space?
Yeah, that's great, because I was just about to follow with that. Me being an Army veteran, so that was one portion of my life where I've served this country, and I would never change it. It's a lesson. I think everyone should do it. Just because it gives you a better outlook in how to deal with people that you don't get along with, you're thrown together with, and you need to learn those skills just in life, period. So we're not all going to be around people that we like, even within our own community. And so having people that disagree with you often, who don't like you, who don't respect you, who don't come from the same background, I think that's the lesson that you're going to learn in a lot of these situations. Right? Because I think in entrepreneurship, which I've done as well, it has been easy for me to sort of thrive in that space because I'm dependent upon me and my skill set, and I can do what I want to do. Right. But then I'm also leaving some things on the table, some skill sets on the table that I didn't start gaining until I started working in these environments where it was 9 to 5. Right. And so the federal government, I know we say it's the dark side, but for me, I look at it like a game. Right. And so for me personally, I like a challenge. I don't want anything easy that gets boring to me. I will tap out. Right. And so for me to be able to break the code to work in my favor. So when I went into the government, I was a lowly GS6, bottom of the totem pole. And to me, it was, how do I use this system for me to be on top? Can I do that? Right. And so I started learning the game. I started making connections. I started doing the things that brought me some skill set, right, that I knew I already had, but I hadn't really used them in the right way. And so now here I am at the top, and I'm able to help others because I know what my journey was. Right. And so I can help them and say, hey, that's a landmine over there. Don't do that. Hey, this is what you need to do to prepare for this conversation you're about to have in this room. Right. And there's been times where I've been the only female and the only Black person in a room, right, to fight for whatever it was I was fighting for. So I think people understand that it's difficult, but you also have to have a plan. Like you need to go into it knowing it's not going to be in your favor, right? It is not in your favor at all, whatever that is, whether it's women, whether it's being Black, whether it's being tall, whether it's being overweight, whether it's being whatever your thing is that people are going to hold against you, just know it's not going to be easy. So you play the game to get to where you're trying to go. And that way you have control over it versus it controlling you.
I love that. That just brings me to a good question from the audience that I want to get Janice to weigh in on. It says, but isn't there a difference between being in spaces where folks disagree versus folks who can't see your whole humanity? And I know, Janice, your book centering whiteness in the workplace kind of touches on that. So when you see that question, how do you want to respond to that? And you see, is there a difference between people that don't like you versus don't see you as a person?
Yeah, I mean, I think even for me as a consultant, I don't work with, there's companies I'm not going to work with, right? And I think if I hate that that the term tolerance is used so much when it comes to Black folks. Like, if only we can be more tolerant. And it's like, I don't want you to tolerate me. I want you to openly invite me and welcome me into this space. And I think we all know what those spaces look and feel like, right? And so I definitely think I was looking for Keena's comment, but for whatever reason, it's not popping up for me. But I see it. Isn't there a difference between? Yeah. And I also think it's important. This kind of touched on what Liz said earlier. I feel like I don't like the term all skin folk ain't kin folk. I feel like it's, like we hear it, we say it, but I feel like it doesn't pinpoint like the layers of the issue. And I think that even in spaces where there are folks like you, there are Black folks that are working on behalf of white systems, right? And they think that by doing that, they'll somehow be shielded from oppressions, right? So I think that it's important to recognize the spaces that we're in and not assume, and I've done this before where I assume because I see representation that these are folks that are going to be welcoming to me. So now I don't make that mistake, right? I'm very discerning when it comes to like, okay, y'all are bringing me in, but are you really open to like learning and the lessons? And if not, I'm not really the person for you. And I think that as an employee, you have to grapple with that, right? When I was in academia, I know Liz can relate to this. When I was in academia, I was in white spaces. I was teaching in a white university in Connecticut, white students, white faculty, the only Black woman in the business school. And there were a lot of compromises and sacrifices I had to make for myself. And I felt like they didn't see my full humanity, right? And I felt like I was in a space where folks just didn't really see me, that invisibility that a lot of Black women experience, hyper visible and invisible. So I think that for me, it's a matter of like recognizing when I'm in those spaces and how long I'm going to be there, because it's only a matter of time. So I know a lot of y'all are in those spaces. So it's like, how long are you going to be there and what's the exit plan?
Look, I love that, Janice, and we've had many conversations back in the days of Clubhouse before it went to the streets. And I think even in our offline conversations, we always end up at this logical step of, well, why do we keep trying to make white spaces safe for Black folks instead of making more Black spaces, right? I mean, that becomes the ultimate endpoint of our logic, because we've tried, right? And I've often said, it's only so much you're going to do when you walk into somebody else's house and you're like, I don't like the way you put your furniture in the living room and the heat, the temperature you have. I'm not really feeling the way you season and cook your food. I think you should change that and be like, but wait, that's their house, right? At some point, they're going to be like, all right, I'm tired of you. You know what I'm saying? And so I think when we expect humanity in a construct that was designed without humanity in mind, then we start to realign our expectations and remove expectations and look at it like, I have a skill set. You pay me well for this skill set. I'm going to get that payment for the skill set and then develop my own entity that I can control, create the environment, culture. And oh, by the way, I just met my CFO, my CMO, my CMO, my chief sales leader. And now we just built whatever the next big thing is, like we see other cultures do.
When you're saying that, I thought about how people say, why is everything got to be Black? But then at the same time, this system was created. It's like, well, y'all made this system, so we're just participating in it and just making it our own and making it powerful. And I know, Jared, you went through it. Right. We didn't make that up. We're like, what's Black? Africans don't say that. They're like, what's Black?
We were just people.
It's the same thing with HBCUs. Like it was first driven off of that, right? Off of that need. But then now look where we have taken it, right? That's where our education comes from, to be completely honest, right? And so if you go to a predominantly white college, you're getting a very different education and experience than somebody that goes to an HBCU. And so that shows you the difference and why we need to have our own spaces. Doesn't mean we can't still play in their space, but we need to have one that really caters to our needs.
So as I was listening to John, I was like, oh, you teed up exactly what I wanted to say. Before I started my business, I was, kind of dibbling and dabbling, looking for a new position. And there was this company, they flew me to New Jersey. I'm in Houston. I mean, all day they rolled out all the red carpet and everything. And so when they offered me the job, because I was like, oh yeah, I'm a shoo-in. They want me for sure. I told the HR person, I said, unfortunately, I'm going to have to decline this position. And he was like, why? Everybody loved you. I said, I spent a full day in your office and I saw not one woman and not one person of color. There is no upward mobility for me at this company. So I'm going to have to decline. And that was when I was like, I'm not looking for a job. I'm tired of this. I'm tired of working for these people. I'm tired of doing this. I'm about to start my own company. And literally that is what happened. And I kept that offer letter. And I had that offer letter. And when I made that amount of money, when I was able to pay myself that amount of money in my company, I celebrated. And I celebrated hard because I was like, I did this. I created this. And as an entrepreneur, I am very intentional about where I spend my money. And I want to create spaces it's not just what we do inside the company who works for us. It's also what our money does. It's also our referral partners. It's like, this is very intentional for me. And when I stand up in front of a room full of white males and I am training them, I am showing them that last Black woman that you thought was just a janitor, no, she might actually have some sense in her brain. That last person who you just looked over in the supermarket, and so being that person, being the change that you want to see is really what we have to do when we're in the workplace.
I would love to piggyback.
You can go ahead, Jared. Let me throw this out here real quick. One thing, I want everybody to check out admsailing.com, the African Diaspora Maritime. When you mentioned making our own spaces, this brother, Charles Kithcart, he's designing the first Black-owned America's Cup boat. If you know America's Cup, is basically build your own boat to compete in the competition. Think of the Jamaican bobsled, but with not the comedy, like a real story. Check out admsailing.com. He's working to build the first America's Cup Black-owned boat. But at the same sense, I thought about us making our own spaces and how important that is. And I know, Jared, that's something you did. Your story is very compelling when you talk about doing all these things for the company, then they cut you out. So lay that out for people real quick.
Yeah, so that's the same, Wesley. I felt that. So for 3 years ago, I was at a Black agency, right? And that's when I started my personal brand journey. And what I wanted to do was they telling me to go reach out to Nike and Uber. And if you're in sales, I got to make cold calls and email and try to get my prospects. So what I was doing is I said, I'm gonna be myself. I'm gonna tell my story with the effort of having sales come to me. So if any advice I would give to anybody else is create your brand. Create your personal brand, create those relationships. Because then if people love you for you and love your expertise, they will buy it for you. And then you have the leverage. Then you could create your own brand. So what I end up doing is creating so much leverage for myself on LinkedIn, creating so many relationships that I priced myself out the game to the point now I can't even get a job where really I don't even want one, right? I started my own business outside the box, but can't even get a job because you don't even know how to price my services. If I'm getting 1 million impressions, 2 million impressions, how many people are coming back and raising their hand because they seen the cool Black kid with the hat on and they saying, yo, what's up? I want to be authentic. Or I can be myself. I can do that, right? What kind of culture we creating and what does that mean for your business that I can't monetize, right? But you want culture, right? You'll parade me around. And that's what ended up happening to me. I was about to move my whole family to Atlanta. Move my whole family. I was a top sales performer. We love you, Jared, and da-da-da. We love what you're doing. Be on this webinar, speak to Adweek, right? But when they're restructuring, how do I get caught in that? And I'm a top performer and things I'm willing to sacrifice. So basically, I'm pricing myself out now because I can't have a conversation with a recruiter. Ma'am, I do this. I interview the CEO of Revolt. This one, we on panels like this. I'm doing something that's bigger than your organization. And why should I bring my business to you?
Boom. And I want to bring up a good comment. The fire today, we got the fire. Here comes some more fire real quick. A great comment from Jonathan. He said, this type of cultural navigation of Black bodies in racist, oppressive environments is not taught in school. There is no framework or blueprint for this experience. I'm going to give Liz that one because Liz, you've been in the classroom probably the most out of everybody up here. What does that make you think when you see that young man say that?
Again, by design. Once you see this, you can't unsee it. And that's why a lot of times I think people know that I'm sad. And I am sad because everything that we're seeing around us is very intentional, and nothing is designed for Black people in this country or globally to be successful. Because if you look at the history of colonization and imperialism, you have a small group of people that took it upon themselves to literally rape, kill, murder, torture, maim, and create mayhem everywhere they went, and teach people, Black folk, as well as other people with more melanin in our skin, that we are inherently inferior and deserve to be paid less, treated worse, stomped on. Our own people are now killing us. So if you get pulled over by a Black cop, because everybody that grew up in the hood know Black cops are worse than the white cops. Everybody know Black cops make the best jack boys and the best dope dealers. If you didn't grow up in the hood, maybe you don't know that, but I did. So I'll tell you that for me, a lot of this talk of how to navigate and how to really game the system, to me, you can't game the system when the whole system and structure is designed for you to fail, which is why I really don't spend a lot of time talking to white folk, because I wouldn't talk to a rapist and tell him stop. Why would I do that? Is he gonna? It's very bizarre to me sometimes that we play this mind game with ourselves, that, oh, it's just an accident. They don't mean anything. Where was, if people wanted, now I'm getting mad. If people wanted to restructure and pay Black folk equitably, make sure we're not harassed by the police. You know, I've been arrested twice, and I got a bachelor's and 3 master's degrees, and have watched police break a man's wrist in my house, and the man was just crying because his daughter had just died. And people will tell you the police, you can trust them. I was in a domestic violence situation and didn't even call the police because I was more scared of the police that the person was going to beat me. So that will let you know the fear that is not just from the criminal justice system. Is if you have a baby, most of us that have a child, I have a grown daughter. So I'm not talking what I think, I'm talking what I know, because my daughter's 24. And in most Black women, when you go into the hospital, you got to worry. I had to have a Black doctor, because if I have a white doctor, they're going to say I'm a junkie if I want pain medication to have a child, a watermelon-sized child coming out of my vagina. So the idea that we're sitting here trying to figure out how to navigate with people that are pathologically and sociopathically have been killing people that look like us their entire generations. We're not talking about something that just happened since George Floyd. Historically, this has been going on for hundreds upon hundreds of years. So for me, a lot of this last 2 years has been a journey of, John told me this in 2020. The system is designed to function the way it has always functioned. And this is it. And I said, no, John, education, books, give me more information, research. I threw my hands up after I saw Tyree Nichols, that video. And I said, these people don't need education. They don't want education. They don't want to treat anybody fairly. This is genocide. This is not a joke, because this has been happening ever since Black folk stepped foot on this soil. Because you have the nerve to say you don't want to be a slave. A slave was not just, this is what they're telling our kids, like that lady in that video. A slave was not a servant like the Jeffersons, like their housekeeper. That was a pig in the yard would get treated better than our ancestors. So the idea of, let me figure out how to game the system or navigate or get that corner office, you could keep the corner office and everything that comes along with it, because I personally believe that there is a war on Black folk that has been happening under our noses since Black folk stepped foot on this soil, and it will continue, because if it wasn't intentional, we would not be at the bottom of every single indicator of well-being, wellness, physical, emotional, spiritual, anything that you could think of for Black folk in America, we are at the bottom, and that is not an accident. And I think that is the question, really. How do we as a community wrap our minds around the idea that we're in an abusive, toxic relationship with white America? It doesn't matter what you do. It doesn't matter what you show them, because everybody on this panel, we're not more eloquent than W.E.B. Du Bois, Frederick Douglass, Harriet, all these leaders that came, MLK, everybody that came before us, and they weren't able to convince them. I'd be damned if I try to convince them. I will not try to convince somebody that I deserve to be anywhere around them. When I'm somewhere, I'm kind of like John. I'm half paying attention, because what difference does it make? One way or another, they already have made their mind up, and it does not matter. So my goal is always to talk to other Black people. I don't give a damn what white people do, to be honest with you, because if they haven't changed in 400 years, what can I tell them that will make them change today? Nothing.
Liz bringing it.
Woo! Hide your feelings if they easily hurt. Hide them.
No, but I think it's important that she said that, because you can't expect your abuser to tell like a victory story. Like, you can't have a rapist say, "Oh, it was, it was totally me. Don't, it wasn't a big deal." Like, you're the rapist. Of course, you're going to tell the story in a nice light to you versus the victim. And we're in an abusive relationship. That, look at our history. I'm Virginia. I saw Janice shout Virginia. I'm from Newport News, kind of as my second home as a military kid. But there's a ton of colonial sites over there. You don't see any Black people there. They're victorying all these people, but you don't see anything of Black people. My wife and I went on a hike recently, and there's a slave house as a historic site. And we're like, this is a Georgia State Park, and it's an historic site with a bunch of slave quarters. Why is this an historic site? Like, it could be an historic property that the family kept, but why is it on the map as like, this is an historic site, you should come visit and get a badge for visiting? And when you think about things like that, Liz is right. Like, this is just the system that we have. And I think what everybody should take from this is you learn from each person up here how to benefit you, not benefit the system, but benefit you. If we haven't learned anything from the years of being on this earth and being in this country, you got to look out for you and your people and figure out, what can I do for my people? Because we have some allies that come over and cross the pond and decide to help out and decide to join over because they realize this is stupid. So there's a few allies that realize this whole thing is just dumb. I don't want to be associated with this. But that's probably 5% of the white people we deal with every single day. So overall, I think everybody here should realize, do something for you. Like, listen, we have sales, education, corporate, recruiting, all different things here. I think this common theme was do for yourself. Does anybody have something to add to that? I think, John, you had something to add?
Yeah, I would take it to the next level, and I think you touched on it. It comes down, and Liz, you said the word, it's community. And I've had plenty of conversations with several folks on this panel about community and the fact that we don't have one right now. That disappeared post-integration, right? The moment we were given access, we fled, left our own businesses, our own communities, even our own values, in the face of white ice being somehow perceived to be colder, right? So doing for yourself is one thing, but the problem is once we were given access, we were individualized, right? Which then certainly diluted our collective power and collective will. So I suggest we have to get back to an understanding of communal obligation and values, worldviews, beliefs, and ideals that move as a singular people, right? And we love to throw out Black people are not a monolith. However, that hasn't served us well, right? Because we are individuals and easily picked apart. So I suggest we have to figure out what our common theme is as a team, rally around that, coalesce, and only then as a base layer can then you build economic power, political, media power, educational power, and center your standards, very much aligned with Dr. Claude Anderson's 5-point platform for self-sufficiency. So, and there's a whole lot of things that we have to work through, from generational, and epigenetic carry through that we are still perpetuating based on programming from 16 to 22 decades
And John, what's in their epigen? If we have trauma in our epigenetics, what's in their epigenetics?
Lack of humanity, right? The inability to feel empathy for those who have been deemed less than human. So, what we're talking about is not just our response to being oppressed. The oppressor has an epigenetic carry through that they're working through. I've often said DEI work is teaching executives how to be human again, right?
Mm-hmm.
Because this is human-based work, and you are trained through the education systems, through society, to make very cold and calculated decisions that are disconnected from humanity for the benefit of the enterprise. That's something that is right. So the human aspect is not taught, especially when it comes to what they're socialized to believe through media and all the other things, and then living in homogenous communities where they have very low exposure and interaction with people that look like us. So I say our message to ourselves as we think about people watching, and what is the takeaway is what is my obligation to my colleague who looks like me in these professional environments, right? What am I obligated to do to support their growth, their development, our collective benefit? Because your individual success doesn't mean much if it doesn't matriculate to a communal benefit, right? And that's why we're able to see individuals who are, unicorns and top of the food chain, from celebrity to athlete to, even the business moguls, millionaires, billionaires, but they're individual examples. Those are anecdotes. You have 43 million people, and the majority of us don't see those heights or don't get access to those rooms, right? When we watched the NAACP awards the other night, me and my wife were steaming because I'm like, where are the leaders? They're putting celebrities up as leaders, entertainers and athletes. Malcolm was talking about that in '63. That's who you put up as a leader. No other community does that. So we have to get back to some really hard truths and some honest accountability of what standards we'll have for our community, what's acceptable, what media representation is acceptable, what's not, what education is acceptable, what's not, what treatment and opportunity and access we can collectively pull without waiting for somebody to allow us to ascend.
Ooh, this is why I like doing these panels. Y'all always make me feel like I'm smart at the end of the day. Make me feel better. I appreciate it.
You are.
No, but I think is a key point for this, and I've said this several times in these panels. Like since the '60s, we haven't had community. We kind of civil rights happened. All right, peace. We got this all figured out. Y'all do you. I'm gonna do me. And I appreciate when anytime anybody says, "Hey, I'll join a panel. I'll talk about something," but also take it a step further. Make sure anybody watching this support not just I followed the person, but buy a book, do a consultation, ask for information, just anything, because that's rupture the intention of my work for like, hey, I'm a fan of your business, I want to help you, just because I'm a fan of it. So I think everybody here should take it offline. You see these avatars, you see the content. I love the content. Call them and make it real, because the good thing about this is we're in different places right now, but we can all talk to each other and have a common thought. That's what we didn't have in the '60s. So at least now I can reach Liz right now, John, everybody like in a couple of seconds, which we should take advantage of that in a positive way and say, hey, we're smart. America would be lame as hell without Black people. Like, if you keep it real, the world would be lame as hell without Black people, because every commercial, every slang word, every fashion, heck, hats, Egyptians made hats. And the hat that Jared has, an Egyptians made that. Like, you wouldn't have anything if we weren't around. So the fact that we were so loving to let people into our culture and take over things with slavery is a sign of our love. But at the same time, we got to be more stern. Hey, let's support each other like we used to do back in the day. The bean pie lady, the lady doing the hair on the corner, like, do that stuff, because we had to make our own way. The thing I wanted to come out of this is the system is there, but we can make our own lanes in the system. We can say, we're not going to change this whole thing, but we'll make our own way somewhere. You mentioned Revolt earlier, Jared. That's a good example of that, or different places that you see Black people taking over enterprise. I want to see people watching this, Black, white, in between, connect and actually do something with this. Not just have this be a kumbaya moment, but actually did something. Because that's what Black History Month should be year-round. And as you close the month out, some of you stop talking about Black history after today. That's a fact. But we can have Black action happen after this. Let's have Black action still happen. Do something. I'm with you, John. There's no leaders anymore, and it's sad to see. But unfortunately, all of our leaders were killed, and we all learned that you become a leader, you're gonna get assassinated. So now a lot of us say nope, and I appreciate y'all stepping up here because a lot of it, we all know Madison Butler. She gets attacked all the time for the stuff she says on LinkedIn.
We all do,
So go ahead,
especially
Liz.
the women. They stay
Yes.
giving us death threats because I feel like they feel like we easy picking, so they stay giving us death threats.
Look,
I don't get no smoke. I want smoke. I don't get none of that. I don't get none of that. So please, if y'all
We're
rocking
gonna
with Liz
send them your
Maddie,
way.
please,
We're
I
gonna
be
send them
getting
your way.
Yeah,
mice.
right?
Come through. Pull up.
Garrett, all you got to do is comment on one of Liz's posts and smoke will come.
Yeah.
I mean,
I be
you
there.
get plenty of smoke.
They go right over my shit. I'd be like,
Yeah, 'cause they coming for me. That's why they jumping over you, though.
I have a 40 reply. I have a 40 reply thread every one time Liz posts. I get a 40 replies, and some guy will be like, "Why are you saying this? Why is racism one political party?" Like, bro, what are you talking about? So yeah,
Great
go to
flag.
Liz,
What I call it,
Janice, or Madison's post. You'll find the smoke.
All the smoke. You'll find the hookah shop. That's
Hey,
fine. Like,
Hey, Cheryl, I have Janice just put a comment in that I think you need to highlight, and it's going to start a whole situation, but I mean, it's brilliant.
Let's do it. We'll wrap it
Yeah,
up.
I just responded.
Go ahead, Janice. Go ahead.
I saw Jonathan. Shout out to Jonathan Ross, who said we're in the sunken place. A lot of us. Oh, he said, I'm not sure how far we've gone into the sunken place. It's scary, and I agree. And I think that when we create our own spaces, we have to make sure we're not replicating the same systems that we've seen. Because I think it's not just enough to be like hashtag Black businesses if we're, as Black business owners, exploiting people's cheap labor and doing all of these things that we're trying to dismantle as well. So I think that that's also an important part of the conversation, is what parts of the white system that we've been indoctrinated into are we also like replicating in our own lives. And I know John talked about the individualism that we feel as, you know, people living in America. I think it's easy to replicate a lot of these things, but we have to also be, and that's the importance of community, because I feel like our community members will check us when we're, you know, replicating systems of harm. So I just wanted to make sure to mention that.
Yeah, it's a phenomenal point. It's
appreciate that.
Yeah, and it's hard because how do you shed those pieces that are so intertwined into the fabric of who you are unconsciously, right? So reestablishing a healthy Black psychology absent of a white psychology. And we only 58 years, we're only 60 years past the Civil Rights Act. Like in the context of,
and that's what's crazy.
Programming. 60 years.
That's what's crazy when people, why is everything about race? Like, you know, your grandpa was probably yelling at somebody at like, these people are still living. These people aren't, they're alive. Emmett Till's accuser is still alive. I think Emmett Till's accuser either just died or is still alive. Like, it's like, this stuff is like still present day. Yeah, okay, so when you think, like, please, one thing I want to say before we get out of here, folks, if you support a Black business, don't complain it costs more money than other business, it's more expensive. What do you expect? What do you expect? We had a higher interest rate loan. We didn't get a loan at all. We just figuring this thing out. What do you expect? If it costs more than it costs at Walmart, fine. At least you're helping get another Walmart to be created. Like, support a Black business, even if it costs a little extra, you're good for it probably. Just try to help out, because when you go to the swap meet, you wasn't thinking about that. When you went to the flea market back in the day, you didn't think about that. Now all of a sudden we're fancy. We got to go shop everything. Just support a Black business. Just do it. It's easy. It's not that hard. Buy a book. Buy it directly from them. If you can't buy it on Amazon, buy it directly to help them make a little bit more coin. I know it's like, I'm making somebody else rich. Yes. And Biff does that all the time. And Karen does it all the time. And Joel does it all the time.
Not
do it for your people
Biff.
too. Biff.
Oh, God. Oh, man. Damn. Come on, McFly. But hold up. But Darryl, let me throw this out there, right? We can do things that actually don't cost money. And I'm not saying don't support Black business. That's a part of it. But even more impactful, stop supporting images, music, messaging, psychological programming that harms us. That's free. They can't sell you what you don't buy. Period. So we can do things for free. Turn the channel. Don't buy those concert tickets. Don't let your children have access to certain imagery. You stop supporting that. They have to change the model before we can then funnel our dollars into Black outlets. We have to stop accepting programming from white ones.
Yeah.
I love
Wow.
when we have the 90s hip hop movement. We need the 90s hip hop movement all over again, and keep it going past 5 years. We need to keep the 90s hip hop movement going forever. I appreciate y'all. This is therapeutic. I know Black History Month is hard for all of us because all of us speak out about it, and it's kind of like, yeah, I got to say something, but do I really want to, and carry that trope on? But it's important for us to keep the stories going because our history is being erased every day. So we have to show it off, unfortunately. But I appreciate each of you. Please, folks, if you're not following everybody on the screen, please follow them and engage with their content. Don't just put a black square. That's where I put something in that song. Like, don't just put a black square up. We need more than the black square. Just so if you believe Black Lives Matter, more than a black square, something else, anything. I don't care at this point. I appreciate y'all. Please be safe. And then Women's History Month starts tomorrow. So I know a lot of these women will be busy this month. Support them when they do that. And please just be a good human. Just be a good human. That's all we want to have. All Black people want is for y'all to be good humans. That's all we really care about. Black, white, Hispanic, Asian. Just be a good human. That's all we're asking. I don't think it's too big of an ask.
Shouldn't be that hard, right, Dara? Shouldn't be that hard.
It shouldn't be. It blows my mind that when people comment on yourself, I'm like, what are you trying to do here? What's your goal? What's the point of you making this racist comment? What are you trying to gain? And they never have an answer. Right.
Narcissism is the goal. Somebody put it in the chat. It's narcissistic, and that's why I refuse to respond to it. I usually don't even respond because I think a lot of this deals with the psychology of control and abuse, and this idea that Black folk are the antithesis of white folk. We're almost in a bad movie. If this was a movie, I'd have been left. I'd try to get my money back. Because the idea that Black folk are we're inextricably tied to this idea that we are anti the flip side of the coin is really dangerous. And I think what John said and what you're saying is really correct. We really need to turn inward in our own community and think about ways to empower ourselves, empower other Black folk, and really get away from this narrative of really defining ourselves by what this system is. We are victims of, if you were not and there's a whole lot of argument about, well, we're Black folk indigenous to this country. Regardless of the fact, if you are Black in the Western Hemisphere, you're not indigenous to the Americas. So why am I buying into my kidnapper, my human trafficker's narrative of who I am, what my value system should be, what I should do, who I should talk to, how I should act? We have to start thinking about our own communities. And I think there's not enough people that are we're talking like people. You don't hear people talking like James Baldwin. You don't hear people talking like Muhammad Ali. Everybody's so people ask me, how do I do what I do? Because I don't care. I am not involved or invested in what somebody got for me when they're not even giving me what they're supposed to give me. So why the hell would I care about what that person thinks when that person's giving me 58 cents to $1? That person does not deserve my respect, let alone I'm doing you a favor by even showing up and blessing you with my presence. And that's how I feel every single day I walk on this earth. Anytime that I'm in a space, I did you a favor because you got me for 60% off. So that means I'm gonna speak my truth. And I think there's not enough people that are willing to just tell it like it is. Because if you look at all them videos I posted, people 60 years ago and 40 years ago talking more bravely than us today. And something is wrong with that. Because that means that we done got more scared. And that is wrong. We should be speaking up and speaking out and telling the truth. And it's a lot of people that's walking around like in a sunken place, lost. Like, oh, if we just give them more information, because I was one of them, let's give them more information. No, we need to inform our own communities, support our own communities, and pour into ourselves. It's nothing separatist about it when you have people out here being unfair in every single way and then pointing the finger back at us. That's narcissism. When they're attacking you and saying you are the one that's a racist. No, I care about Black people, period, point blank.
Boom. The perfect way to end this. And the only information I'm going to give out there is if people wonder about where everybody came from, ask Bill Nye, the science guy. Said we all came from Africa. He said it. He's the whitest guy in America. So if Bill Nye said it,
then it must be true.
It must be true. So I appreciate y'all. Please be safe. We're going to catch you. Follow the hashtag Professionally Black. Follow the hashtag Black LinkedIn. And just amplify these stories and just talk about it. And like Liz said, be brave about it. Somebody's going to hate you. You're going to get a troll. You're going to get some weird comment. You're going to get one of those Elon Musk weird cryptic code whatever they call those things. Just ignore it and move on and be about yourself. I appreciate everybody, and we'll catch you next time.
Bye-bye.